Om Bhadram Karnebhih Shrunuyama Devaah Bhadram Pashyemakshabhiryajatraah Sthirairangeih Tushtuvam Sustanubhih Vyasema Devahitam Yadayuh Sustina Indro Vruddhasavaah Sustina Pusha Vishyavedaah Sustina Starkshu Arishtanemih Sustino Brihasphadir Dadhatu Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. O the Almighty God, may we hear with our ears what is auspicious. May we see with our eyes what is auspicious. May we, while offering our praise to the Almighty God with our bodies strong of limbs, enjoy the life which the God has pleased to grant us. May Indra of great fame be well disposed to us. May the all-knowing, omniscient Pusha, the sun, be propitious to us. May Garuda, the vanquisher of miseries, be well pleased with us. May Brihaspati grant us all prosperity. Om peace, peace, peace. Now we were dealing with the first verses of the second chapter of Mandukya Upanishad, which deals with the illusoriness or unreality of creation. A few points I have already explained earlier, but I shall repeat because they are to be kept in mind when we deal with this particular chapter. As I said earlier, the Mandukya Upanishad has got 4 chapters, altogether 215 verses. It's a commentary on the Mandukya Upanishad, which is the shortest Upanishad with only 12 verses, 12 mantras, which expound the philosophy of Advaita through a special method. It is purely psychological. It analyzes human experience in its totality during the waking, dream and deep sleep states. In the first chapter, Gaudapada tried to establish the unreality of the empirical world on the basis of Shruti, means on the basis of Upanishads, on the basis of all the Upanishads, especially Mandukya Upanishad, the 12 mantras. So the first chapter, which you may notice is called Agama Prakarana, means the chapter which deals with the Upanishad mantras, Upanishad verses, is almost a commentary on the 12 mantras, 12 verses of the Upanishad. So the method he employed was almost theological and philosophical. He uses the tools of metaphysics and also epistemology, but on the basis of revealed scripture, Mandukya Upanishad. So he quotes from different Upanishads, not only Mandukya Upanishad, he quotes from different Upanishads. And in the second chapter, it deals with the unreality of the world. He establishes his doctrine, that is the unreality of the world, or rather non-origination of the world, on the basis of logic, on the basis of reason. I already explained in the last class that when Gaudapada had to deal with the objections raised by those schools of thought, which are called heterodox schools of thought, who did not accept the authority of the Upanishad literature, he had to depend exclusively on reason and logic. And also he had to depend upon the empirical experience that we all have to go through in our day-to-day life situations. And the reason is, as I said, he had to confront the objections raised by the four schools of later Buddhism and also the ancient Indian materialism and also the school of Jaina philosophy. These 6 schools of ancient Indian philosophy did not accept the authority of the Vedas or the Upanishads. So they were called heterodox schools or atheistic schools. Theism in Indian philosophical and spiritual tradition means a system of thoughts which doesn't accept the authority of the Vedas. There is no role for God to play in deciding whether a school of philosophy is theistic or atheistic. Of course, this is maybe, I can go a little deeper, there is an ancient statement in Panini's Vyakarana Sutra, pithy statements. It's called Astigova, Naistigova, Daishtigova. The ancient grammarian Panini perhaps deals with 3 schools of thought. Those who believe that something exists after death, those who believe in rebirth, and those who believe in the continued existence of something which is beyond body and mind, etc. They're called theistic, and those who do not accept, and also those who believe in destiny or kind of fatalism, called the school of Destinianism. It is not a very prominent school, but it is referred to by modern interpreters of Indian thought systems. But we are not directly concerned with that. The idea to be kept in mind is theism in Indian philosophical tradition implies a system of thought which accepts Vedas or Upanishads or Vedanta scriptures as the final authority. Even certain systems of thought which accept the Vedas as the final authority but have nothing to do with God are accepted as theistic schools of thought. See, Sankhyas, they do not accept the existence of a monotheistic creator God the way the Vedantins and others accept. And there are innumerable examples. I won't go into those details. So, in the first verse, Gaudapada tried to establish that all people generally accept. Of course, it's a common sense statement. All people generally accept that our experiences in dream are unreal. Why? Because when we analyze our dream experiences from waking state, we find that they were all unreal. Now, Gaudapada uses the same logic to equate dream experience with waking state experience. So he says, when you look at dream experiences from the standpoint of your waking state experience, you agree that dream experiences are absolutely unreal. Okay. Now, dream experiences are cancelled, their unreality is experienced in waking state. Now try to look at the waking experience objects, waking experience, from the standpoint of dream experience. In dream, as I said earlier, you need only 1 split second to travel 10,000 miles. But in waking state, you may need perhaps 20 hours. So, there is a difference. And again, you go to sleep here and you dream you are somewhere else. Maybe 20 miles away, 20,000 miles away. So there are differences. So that means, from dream standpoint of view, waking state experiences are not real. For a dreamer, dream experiences are the only reality from the dream point of view. If you look at a dreamer, of course you can't ask him, if you cannot ask him, but if you could ask him, he would say, waking state experiences are all unreal, he would say. Just as we say that dreams experiences are unreal. So both, each is cancelled by the other. On the other hand, you could have considered dream experiences real if dream experiences are experienced the same way in waking state, but it doesn't happen. You could also consider the waking state experiences are as real if waking state experiences are experienced the same way in dream state, but it doesn't happen. To be called real, to be accepted as real, in the true sense of the term, is capital letter R. You should have the same experience in all the three states of your existence. In dream, in waking state, and also in deep sleep. But it doesn't happen. In deep sleep, there is neither waking state experiences nor dream state experiences. There is nothing. So, Gaudapada says, if dream experiences are unreal, then by the same yardstick, you have to accept that waking state experiences are unreal. In that case, the world also is unreal. Because when we talk about the world, we are only talking about waking state experiences. As I said last time, if you live for 90 years, and if you sleep for 8 hours every day, you won't say that you live only for 60 years. For 30 years you have slept. If you sleep every day 8 hours, 1/3 of the daytime, a day, 1/3 of 24 hours, that means for 30 years you slept, you have dreamt, and for 60 years you kept awake. But you don't say that you lived only for 60 years. You would say that you lived for 90 years. Which means you equate the 30 years with the 60 years. You equate the 30 years of dream state or sleep state with the 60 years of waking state. And you say that dream experiences are unreal. Then how can you say the waking state experiences are real? Because both you include in the same category. So Gaudapada says, if waking state experiences are unreal, then the world in which you live, the world of which you are a part, which you experience every day in your life, cannot be said to be real. In that case, the world doesn't exist, so the world has not been created. This is the basis of, the psychological basis of the doctrine of non-origination, the Ajadavada, which is technically called Ajadavada. This is accepted by, directly or indirectly, this is accepted by the ancient schools of Buddhism, especially the two idealistic schools of Buddhism, namely the Vijnanavadins, the subjective idealists, and also by Shunyavadins, Nagarjuna and his followers who believed in the ultimate reality of voidness or emptiness. In fact, one ancient book which is much more ancient than Gaudapada, which is called Langavatara, famous book, one of the most prominent works of the early school of Vijnanavadins, means early school of subjective idealists, did accept the unreality of waking state as the unreality of dream state. Okay, we'll come to that later. So, we already dealt with the first verse, and we also dealt with the second verse, but I shall just repeat. Adirghatva cha kalasya gatva desha na pasyati pratibuddhascha vai sarvastasmin desena vidyate. Now, in the first verse, Gaudapada says, generally, people with proper discerning faculty declare the unreality of all entities experienced in dream. There is a reason, because they are located within. So it is called antasthana, means they are located within. See, in dream, you experience maybe riding on an elephant, and where is the elephant? Within your own body. So Gaudapada says, all your nervous systems are closed. Your mouth, everything is closed. It's pitch dark. You are sleeping in a small room. So there is no question of an elephant coming into your room. So everything is within. So andasthana, so there is no elephant. But the unreality of elephant, the dream elephant, is experienced only from the waking state point of view. For the dreamer, the elephant is real. And again, samvrudatvena. Samvrudatvena means it is an enclosed space. See, very small room. Therefore, it cannot be real. This I have already explained this. Now, when you listen to this view of Gaudapada, an objection may be raised by either a subjective idealist or Buddhist school, or Shunyavadins who believe in the doctrine of emptiness. Either in Vijnanavadins, who are called subjective idealists, and also Shunyavadins. I have to make a few points clear. Those of you who may not be familiar with the four important schools of later Buddhism, a few points should be made clear. I want to repeat again, because it should have to be, there is no other way. In Buddhist philosophical tradition, there are two important phases of the evolution of Buddhist thought. One, the earlier school of Buddhism, based on the original teachings of Buddha, which are enshrined in the Pali language, Pali canon it is called. It's called three fundamental books which contain the original teachings of Buddhism. We have nothing to do with that. Remember with this very well. When Gaudapada or Shankaracharya refers to Buddhist philosophy, actually it's something very interesting which many people don't realize. Neither Gaudapada nor Shankaracharya ever refers to these original teachings of Buddhism. I shall explain this. See, Buddha's teachings were mostly based on some fundamental ethical principles. Buddha didn't bother much about metaphysics or a transcendental philosophy. Buddha asked you to lead a good life in this world. That was the essence. So, it's called Chattvari Arya Satyani, the four noble truths based on the existence of dukkha, cause of dukkha, a way out of dukkha, and the way out of dukkha is through nirvana or liberation, which he explained in the Eightfold Noble Path. Right memory, right speech, right action, and so on, right conduct, and so on. Now, so the earlier school of Buddhism, based on Buddha's original teachings, were enshrined in three fundamental Buddhist canonical works, which called Sutta Pitaka, Vinaya Pitaka, Abhidhamma Pitaka. It's called Tripitaka. Three means, three in Sanskrit and English means same, three. So Pitaka means baskets or bags. So Buddha's original teachings, which are based on a kind of spiritual, humanistic, ethical philosophy, were enshrined in the Pali language canon. It's called the three canonical foundational works. Buddha preached in Prakrit language, but his teachings were written down by later Buddhist bhikkhus like Ananda and others in the second Buddhist council, which took place in today's Sri Lanka, Kandy, around 3rd century, 326 BC, around that time. So in the second council, there are different views among historians about this. Some of Buddhist bhikshus, Buddhist monks, repeated Buddha's teachings, and they were later incorporated in these 3 foundational works, the 3 baskets, 3 Pidakas baskets. And in these teachings, Buddha mostly dealt with the principles of ethical life in this world. Now, Buddha was born in 460 and passed away. Please remember, Buddha was born in 560 and passed away in 480. You have to count backward, BC, mind, before Christ. So he was born in 560 and passed away in 480. He lived for 80 years. Before Christ, of course. Now, from 2nd century BC onwards, a new trend, philosophical trend, began to evolve in Buddhist philosophical tradition. A large number of great Vedic scholars flocked into the Buddhist fold, and they became the great theologians and philosophers of Buddhist tradition. Among them, 4 distinct schools of thought developed, which in a way had nothing to do with the original teachings of Buddhism. These 4 schools were divided into 2 categories: the 2 schools of realists and the 2 schools of idealists. The 2 schools of realists were related to the Hinayana tradition of Buddhism, which is prevalent today in Burma, Sri Lanka, maybe Thailand, and a few countries. And these 2 schools of realism were the Sautrantikas and Vaibhashikas. Both believed in the reality of external objects. A proper understanding of Buddhist philosophical tradition is a must for anyone to understand the metaphysical principles enshrined in the Mandukya Karika, and also the fundamental arguments which Gaudapada puts forward. Now, as I said, there were 2 schools of realists, Sautrantikas and Vaibhashikas. Even among them there were quarrels. Vaibhashikas believed that you can understand, you can directly perceive things. So through direct perception, you can come in contact with the external objects. So-called Bahya Pratyakshvadinaha, they're called. Means those who argued, those who accepted that external things are real and they can be perceived through direct perception. Through eyes and mind, ears and mind, and sense of touch and mind, sense of smell and mind, and sense of taste and mind. Together, you can perceive external objects. Remember, both the schools of realists believed in the reality of external objects. They believed the external objects are real. Unlike the subjective idealists, that is Vijnanavadins, and the so-called nihilists, who are called Shunyavadins, Nagarjuna school. Now, so one school was the Vaibhashikas, who believed that external objects can be directly perceived. In Sanskrit, they are called Bahya Pratyakshvadinaha. The other school of thought, they were also realists. They were called Sautrantikas. They believed that external things cannot be directly perceived because in Buddhist tradition, they believe in Kshanabhangavada, in the doctrine of momentariness. Everything exists only for a split second. So when you see an object in front of you and say, well, in Sanskrit, idam jalam, means this water. Suppose you see a glass of water in front of you. you see this water. But the water which called this, by which you have in mind, you imply the water in front of you. It is not the same water which you actually saw, because it has changed. Means every moment everything changes. So the Sautrantikas believed that external things can only be inferred, can never be directly perceived. But both these schools believe in the reality of external objects. Gaudapada will deal with all these schools of thought. That's why we have to remember these points. Then there were the two schools of idealists. They were known as the school of subjective idealism and the school of emptiness, or the school of voidness. Subjective idealism is a name used, but modern Buddhist scholars sometimes may not agree that Vijnanavada or Yogacara, another name, could be considered to be a school of subjective idealism as the subjective idealism of Berkeley and others. They won't agree with that view. So this equation is somewhat debatable. It is being debated among scholars in comparative, and especially in comparative philosophy. But anyhow, they are called subjective idealists, and their special feature was that they completely denied the existence of external objects. External objects do not exist independent of the mind of the perceiver or the cognizer. That was their view. So long as those things exist in your mind, they do exist. They have no existence independent of the perceiver's mind, which is Sanskrit called chittam. And the other school of thought was known as it is a very famous school, the doctrine of emptiness, the doctrine of voidness, Shunyavada. And Nagarjuna was the important exponent of Shunyavada. He also wrote a famous book. It is called Madhyamika Karika or Madhyamika Shastram. Almost a book like this. Very close to Advaita. But then ultimately Nagarjuna says nothing exists. So Nagarjuna comes very close to Advaita. But when Advaitins say there is one supreme reality, which is the immanent reality, which is the essence of everything in this world, which is the transcendental reality, which is omnipresent, which is all-pervading, which is of the nature of supreme knowledge, supreme consciousness, a supreme bliss, which is called Atman Brahman. This is the view of Advaitins. Nagarjuna comes very close to this, and then he says it is zero. That's Nagarjuna's view. In that case, who enjoys the blissfulness of nirvana? Nagarjuna could not give any reply, nor later Buddhists could give any reply. So why I am referring to this point, these schools of thought should be kept in mind when we deal with these subjects. So these were the four schools of philosophy. Because here Gaudapada is constrained to use only reasoning, only logic, because he had to confront with schools of thought who rejected the authority of the Upanishads and Vedanta scriptures like the Vedas. So that's one point. Then in the second verse, we already said, Adirgatvacha kalasya gatva desha na pasyati pradibudhascha vai sarvastasmin deshe na vidyade. Here there is an objection. Now, the objector says, the statement that external objects perceived in dream are located in an enclosed space is not correct. For one who has slept in the east sees the dream as it were in the north. So that means he should be moving from east to north. That is the objector says. Most probably is a subjective idealist. But then Nagarjuna says, you may go to sleep here in San Francisco and you may dream you have reached London. But when you get up, you are not in London, you are here. That means you are not gone anywhere. So the act of going to London was just a mental vibration, a mental illusion. So the act of going to London took place only as a mental experience. It didn't really take place. Which means all these so-called external experiences like going to London took place within your own body, which is quite impossible. Therefore, it is obvious that dream experiences are absolutely unreal. Now, this everyone will agree. Then Gaudapada comes to the another point. He says, waking state experiences are certainly not different from dream experiences. The unreality of dream experiences is accepted by all. And then if we could prove that waking state experiences are really not different from dream experiences, then naturally you have to admit that just as dream experiences, waking state experiences are also equally unreal. For this, Shankaracharya will use a syllogism. We will come to that in the fourth mantra. Now, the third verse, that's where I have to take today. Abhavascha radhadinam sruyate nyayapurvakam vaidathyam tena vai praptam swapna ahu prakashidam. This is the mantra. Those who don't have the mantra need not worry. Those who have got the book, they may keep in mind, this particular verse refers to a famous statement in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Na tatra ratha, na ratha yoga, na panthano bhavanti. This means here. See, in dream, you'll see that you are traveling in a chariot, you are taking a straight highway, and you have horses. But when you come to waking state, you find all these things are really unreal. Now, here Gaudapada has already established that the experiences in dream, perceived in dream, really do not exist at all. This is obvious. Now we will come to the fourth mantra, which is very important from a metaphysical and logical point of view. In this verse, in the fourth mantra, Gaudapada says that entities or experiences or objects perceived in dream are unreal because they are perceived. Just see the logic behind. Normally in human life, if you see something, if you perceive something, you will believe it is real. And if you do not perceive something, it is unreal. But in Vedanta, if you perceive something, it is unreal. The logic is this. Here we have to remember, reality means the absolutely real, means something which exists without any change in waking state, dream state, and deep sleep state. What is absolutely real should remain the same in the past, in the present, and in future. It cannot have a beginning. What is absolutely real cannot have a beginning, because if you say it had a beginning, you imply that it did not exist before it began, before it originated. So it cannot have any origination. So the absolute reality cannot have any origin. Why? Because when you say something originated, you mean to say that it did not exist before it originated. And whatever comes into existence, which means whatever comes within the purview of time, will vanish sometime in future. And the state between this origination and disappearance is called existence. So whatever has a beginning will have an end, and the middle stage is called existence. It cannot be real in the true sense of the term. It cannot be absolutely real. It is not absolutely unreal. It is only relative. So, Gaudapada says, whatever you pursue with your senses of perception and mind coming together, that's how you pursue things. You see an object when mind and eyes come together. You hear a voice when mind and ears come together. You taste something when the sense of taste and mind come together, like that other 5 senses of perception. So, anything that you pursue cannot be absolutely unreal. So, when Gaudapada says it is not unreal, what he means is this: it is not absolutely real. When he refers to empirical things, phenomenal experiences, and when Gaudapada says these things are unreal, what he means is this: these things are not absolutely real. Absolute unreality cannot be even experienced, even at the empirical level. Gaudapada himself will give the reason, Shankaracharya also, Vanthyaputra and Sasavishana and so on, or Gandharvanagara. I see that you see children looking at the sky on a cloudy day, may think that there is dust and filth in the sky. The sky is dirty, a child may say, but we know it is only just clouds or dust, that's all. But sky is not affected by these things. Just at the lower level of atmosphere, at lower level, there may be clouds, there could be dust, but it doesn't affect the sky, we know. But child may think there is somebody sitting in the sky and so on. Or when you are driving in a desert road, from a distance you may think, in a midday, when sun is blazing overhead, you may think there is a lake overhead, because a broad road under the blazing sun may appear to be a lake, a pool of water. Like these things, these are all mirages. These are not real. This world in which we live is not unreal, just as the lake that appears to exist on a broad road is unreal. Because it can never be real. It's just a sensation. But the world in which we live exists. That means they are relative. So the relative world can be equated with the experiences of waking state. And the totally unreal things can be equated with this dream state. So Gaudapada's thesis is this: from the highest point of view, the unreality of the empirical and the unreality of the totally unreal are the same. You can't say that waking state is more real than dream state. But remember, from waking state point of view, waking state is more real than dream state. But from the highest Turiya point of view, absolute point of view, waking state and dream state are equally unreal. That is the thesis. Slowly the philosophy will unfold in course of time. Now, here Gaudapada says that things seen in a dream are unreal because they are perceived. So whatever you perceive cannot be real in the absolute sense, because the absolute reality cannot be perceived. Atman, or absolute reality, can only be experienced. That is Atman. That is supreme consciousness. That is, can never be explained or defined or described. The intuitive, mystical experience that you experience within can never be perceived because it cannot be objectified. It cannot be explained. It cannot be described or defined. So, whatever is seen is real in a relative sense, not real in the absolute sense. In the absolute sense, there is only one reality, that is Turiya or Atman, which is the immanent reality as the supreme consciousness, knowledge and bliss present in everything in this world, which is the all-pervading reality, which is a transcendental reality. And you cannot see that. So whatever is seen is not the absolute reality. Now, if dream experiences are unreal, then waking state experiences cannot be less unreal. They are equally unreal. Waking state experiences means empirical experiences. Cannot be real in the absolute sense. And as I said earlier, whatever is to be called real in the absolute sense should exist without any change in the past, present and future. Everything in this world. Whether the mighty oceans which live maybe for millions of years, or an insect which may live perhaps for a few seconds, they are equally unreal. Why? An insect may live for a few hours. The earth in which we live may exist in this manner, maybe 13, 14 million years. But they all come into existence, exist for some time, either a few millions of years or a few minutes, and then vanish. So they are not real in the true sense of the term. They are not real in the absolute sense. What is real in the absolute sense never comes into existence because it always exists. What always exists cannot come into existence. And what always exists cannot cease to exist. That is Atman or Brahman or the Supreme Consciousness. This is the thesis. So, Gaudapada says, whatever is perceived in dream states are unreal because they are perceived. For the same reason, whatever is perceived in waking state are also unreal because they are also perceived. There is no difference. The only difference is that in dream everything is within and in an enclosed space. See, we are closed our eyes, we are sleeping, and we have so many experiences, walking, flying, and so on. Everything within and in an enclosed space. Therefore, we think they are unreal. But this difference doesn't count from the highest absolutist point of view. Now, here also, Gaudapada uses a famous method which is used in Aristotelian logic also, syllogism it is called, a form of deductive reasoning which consists of a major premise, a minor premise and also a conclusion. But of course in Vedantic syllogism there are 5 elements which are somewhat different, so we will explain that. It's called Panchavayava Vakyam, means 5 elements, 5 factors. Just as in fact there is not much difference. In Vedantic logic, there is always an attempt to link the illustration with the conclusion. In Aristotelian logic, it is automatically achieved. So, Shankaracharya, in fact, he makes out a complete syllogism from this Karika. It's called in Sanskrit, those who are interested, Pratiknya, Hetu, Drishtanta, Upanaya and Nigamana. I'll explain this one after another. Now, what is the preposition, the fundamental thesis of inference in this particular verse? It is this: the unreality of waking state experiences is the fundamental premise or preposition to be proved. That is the first point. So, whatever we pursue in waking states is unreal. This is the preposition to be established. This is a very well refined logical syllogism which Shankaracharya uses to drive home the point enshrined in the fourth Karika. The preposition or the premise is this: whatever we pursue in waking state is unreal. We have to remember, Advaita or Shankara or Vedantic teachers do not tell you that we don't exist, the world doesn't exist, I don't exist, waking state experiences are all absolutely illusion. That is not the point. You should not mistake this. Very often there is a lot of misunderstanding, mostly because of incompetent translations into English, French, German and other languages. So when you study these scriptures under a master, you can understand. Advaita does not tell you the world is absolutely unreal. Advaita only tells you that the world in which we live is not the absolute reality. Advaita does accept the relative existence of this world. What Advaita tells you is this: from the highest point of view, the unreality of the relative and the unreality of absolute non-existence do not make a difference. It's the same. That's the only point. So, from the standpoint of Advaita philosophy, the world is not negated. The world is accepted. But the world is not accepted as one eternal, everlasting reality. No educated man who knows the fundamentals of modern physics will tell you that this earth existed like this all through. He won't tell you. No educated man will accept if you tell him, well, this world existed in the same manner a few trillions of years back. No one accept it. Or the world will exist in the same manner for some trillions of years, light years. No. The world may exist in this manner maybe for 15 billions, or if you believe in Big Bang, that's all. If you don't believe, that's another story. So what Advaita tells you is this: accept this Atman or the Supreme Consciousness, which never comes into existence because it always exists, and therefore can never cease to exist because it always exists. Except this Atman or Supreme Consciousness, everything in this world is relative, not absolutely non-existent. This is a point to be remembered. Now Shankara uses a syllogism here. So the premise or the preposition is this: whatever we perceived or all entities perceived in waking state are unreal. Which means they are not absolutely real. That's a point to be remembered. This is the preposition to be established. Now, this is what is called, in Sanskrit we call it pratiknya, which is the first part of Panchavayava Vakya. Means the first, instead of 3 factors in Aristotelian logic, we have 5 factors to extent. But the point is, from one angle you may say Aristotle's method is a bit simple. But in Vedanta, there is a clear attempt to link the illustration with the preposition while coming to a conclusion. That's the main difference. So the preposition is that all entities, everything that is perceived in Jagrut state or waking state is unreal. Okay, now what is the ground for this inference? It's called Hetu. It is Drishyatva. Drishyatva means because they are being perceived. They are all being perceived. All these things are being perceived. Perceived means what? We perceive them with our eyes, ears, sense of touch, sense of smell, or sense of taste, and mind. And whatever we perceive with these instruments cannot be real in the absolute sense. Atman cannot be seen. The Supreme Consciousness cannot be seen, cannot be tasted, cannot be heard, and cannot be smelled. So all empirical things you can see, you can hear, but not Atman. Therefore, the ground for inference is all these things in this empirical world are perceived, drishyatvat. Because they are perceived, they are unreal. See, that logic should be understood clearly. In ordinary logic, whatever you see, you think it is real. But in Vedanta, whatever you see, because you see it, it is unreal. Because the absolute reality cannot be seen. What is seen can be real only in a relative sense. That's the idea. Now, then comes an illustration. The illustration is this. Whatever we perceive in waking state are like the entities perceived in dream state. The comparison, the illustration. They are just like whatever we experience in dream state. The point should be remembered. Whatever we experience in dream state is experienced to be unreal when you come to waking state. But for a dreamer, dream experiences are real, just as waking state experiences are real for somebody in waking state. They don't remain the same in all the two states. Therefore, one state is cancelled, rejected by the other. Therefore, they are real only in a relative sense. But Gaudapada doesn't accept the difference between the unreality of the relative and the unreality of the absolutely unreal. That point should be remembered. From the highest point of view, the unreality of the relative and unreality of the absolutely non-existent are the same. See, suppose there are two students, both have failed in the examination. One got 30% mark, the another one got 35% mark, but the minimum mark required is 50%. You can't say that 35% person is less unsuccessful than the one who got only 30% mark. Both have failed. So from the highest point of view, both have failed. You can't say the one who got 31% mark is less unsuccessful than the one who got 30% mark. Both have failed. But if you, from the standpoint of a rank holder, both are as good as failed. There is no difference. So in the highest point of view, there is no difference. That's the point to be understood. I gave this example, I illustrated this point in the light of a famous example from the gospel, See, if you, Sri Ramakrishna, suppose you are entering a gate and you find a gate is made of bricks, and then when you walk through the road, gravel road, it is also made of brick. And when you come to the first floor, it is made of brick. The staircase leading to the second floor is made of brick. And the second floor is made of brick. When you reach the top floor and terrace, you find that also is made of brick. But from the standpoint of somebody who is just entering through the gate, he may think, well, gate is made of brick, also the road, but the building, whole building may not be made of the same brick. He won't understand it. But from the standpoint of somebody who has reached the terrace, for him, the brick from which the gate is made or the first floor is built is not different from the brick used for building the third floor, from the standpoint of somebody who has reached the top. So from the highest standpoint of view, from the highest absolutist point of view, the unreality of the relative and the unreality of totally unreal are the same. So the preposition is that whatever exists, whatever is perceived in waking state are unreal or is unreal. That is the preposition, the premise. And there is a ground for this inference. It is called hetu in Nyaya. Nyaya means Indian logic, in Vedantic logic. The reason is because waking state objects are perceived. Now illustration is they are perceived just like the entities perceived in dream state. This is illustration is called drishtanta. Now, just as the objects perceived in dream are unreal, in the same way the objects perceived in waking state are also unreal. What is the common factor? Drishyatvad, according to Bhasha, Drishyatvad. Whatever you perceive cannot be real in the absolute sense. Now, this hetu is brought into relation to the preposition. It is called Upanishads. So just as whatever we perceive in dream state are unreal, so also whatever perceive in waking state are unreal. Therefore, for this reason, whatever is experienced in waking state is unreal. This is the conclusion of the syllogism. But at the same time, there is a difference. In waking state, everything is experienced outside. We walk through the streets. But in dream, we walk through the street, but the street and we all are within ourselves. Roads, we may be driving, but car, ourselves, road, everything is within. But in waking state, they are outside. And then they are in a limited space. These are the two main differences. But these differences do not count much. In another sense, we can say, Gaudapada, the author of this technical work, sees no difference between Vyavaharika and Pratibhasika. Vyavaharika related to empirical state, waking state. Pratibhasika related to Swapna state or dream state. So, in Sanskrit, Drishyatvam, Jadatvam, Parichinnatvam. See, means they are being perceived and then they are not eternal, they are not self-conscious, and then they are limited. All these things are common to both the states. Now we'll come to the fifth state, fifth verse. There are a few objections raised. Some schools of philosophers will raise some question, They would say, in waking state, you can walk, you can eat food, you can go to a library, you can study books, all this, you can go to your office, you can get promotion, all these things are possible. In dream state, these things are not possible. So there is saprayojanata, means there is some practical utility in waking state. In dream state, there is no practical utility. There you have to remember, As I said earlier, if you live for 90 years and if you sleep for 8 hours every day, for 30 years you sleep, for 60 years you are awake, but how long, if somebody asks you how long did you live, you don't say I lived only for 60 years. You include 30 years also. So, there is a difference, of course. In waking state, it takes longer time to reach New York from here, 6 hours. In dream state, split second. And in dream state, everything takes place in a subtle way. Everything is a mental projection. In waking state, not only mind, but external senses, senses of perception and senses of action, both are involved. That's true. But then Gaudapada will reply, the utility of the practical benefit of waking state experiences applies only to waking state. Suppose you have taken a full meal and you go to sleep, maybe in dream you feel you are terribly hungry. Or other way, if you are terribly hungry and if you go to sleep, and you sleep because you have desire for a full hearty meal, but it's not available, so you go to sleep. In sleep you enjoy a hearty meal. But in waking, when you wake up, you are again hungry. So, the benefit or utility of waking state is confined to waking state only. As I said, if you have a full meal in waking state, you are very happy. But you go to sleep, in dream, there you are hungry again, though you have had hearty meal. So, the benefit or utility of waking state experiences are confined to waking state experiences. They do not extend to dream state, and vice versa. Now, next, 5th verse. Swapna jagride sthane kyekamakur manishinaha vedanam hi samatvena prasiddhena iva hetuna. This is a famous verse. According to wise thinking philosophers, people with the discerning mind, the dream and waking states are the same, because in both states things are perceived. So now we will come to the next verse. The 6th verse is very important, and that is a thesis, one of the central doctrines of Advaita, non-dualistic philosophy. Adau ante chayan nasti vartamanepi tattatha vitathai sadrishas santu avitatha iva lakshitaha. It's a famous verse. The point is this: whatever does not exist before it came into existence, and whatever does not exist after it ceases to exist, is not absolutely real. The point should be understood. See, whatever has a beginning did not exist before it began. If you say something originates, something comes into existence, what does it mean? It means from a state of absence, it enters a stage of presence. It did not exist before it started existing, before it originated. There is only one reality in the world which existed before it started existing, because it cannot come into existence because it always existed. Whatever always exists cannot come into existence. Come into existence means what? From a state of non-existence, it enters a state of existence. So, there was a time when it did not exist. So, there will be a time when it won't exist. Well, this can be made very simple. through the illustration of clay and different vessels, utensils made of clay. Suppose you have a number of glasses made of clay, cups made of clay. When you break these utensils made of clay, then they are no more called utensils, they are called clay. Before the pot maker manufactured these utensils, these vessels, there was clay. Now, can you say that when these vessels made of clay are assembled in front of you, they have an existence independent of clay? No. Even that wooden, even when that cup made of clay is sitting on your table in front of you, even at that time it is only clay. And then before it was manufactured, it was clay. And then when it is broken, then also it is clay. Then can you say that when it is sitting in front of you in the shape and form of a cup, it has got an existence independent of clay? Even when it is sitting in front of you as a vessel made of clay, then also it is clay only. There is only one difference. The pot maker, the manufacturer, gave it a shape, so it became, the clay took a form. And then he gave it a name, a cup. So the name and form, that was, these two factors, name and form, were added to clay. Then it came to be known as a cup. But this will come and go. Then when you break it, the shape vanishes. And when the vessel is broken, then you don't call it a vessel. It's called clay only. So name and form come and go. They have a beginning. Therefore they will have an end. So whatever did not exist before it came into existence cannot be said to exist even when it is existing in front of you. Just as a cup made of clay cannot be said to exist independent of clay even when it is in the form of a cup. So also, whatever exists at present cannot be said to exist unless it always existed in the same way, in the same shape before it came into existence. And there is only one reality in the world which exists, which always exists, and therefore cannot come into existence. That is Atman, the Supreme Consciousness, which is the Atman, Supreme Knowledge, Bliss, which is called in the Mandukya Karika or Mandukya Upanishad by the name Turiya. That is a central thesis of the Upanishad. So, this is a famous verse, and it in fact incorporates the central thesis, the central doctrine of Advaita philosophy. Ado ande chayan nasti vartamanebi tattatha. Ado means in the beginning. So that which does not exist in the beginning as well as in the end is non-existent even in the middle. Even when you say it exists, it is non-existent, independent of its real reality. Just as a cup has no existence independent of clay. As clay it existed even before the manufacturer manufactured the cup. And as a clay, it will exist even if you break it. Then even if it is sitting in front of you, then also it exists only as clay. Then what about the name and form? They come and go. That is the argument. Okay, I think we already reached the end of the time. So we'll continue this class in the next session, next Friday. So thank you. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Sri Ramakrishna Order.